Welcome back to my corner of the garage. I'm excited about this next project. I am in need of a wall clock for my office. And so I had this really cool board that a friend gave me. It was about half of this width, obviously, that I cut down and glued together, sanded it up. It's actually a piece of air-dried black walnut with some pretty neat spalting going on in the sapwood, which I've never really seen before. And so I've decided to make a clock out of that. It's nice and thick. I've got some brass rods here that I'm going to use for the hours. The thicker ones are going to be for the 12, 3, 6, and 9, and the smaller ones for the hours in between. Got a template here to help me position all those holes correctly. And I've got some brass clock hardware that I'm going to be installing for that to work. So enjoy this build as I figure this out as I go. I am really excited to try out this new circle cutting jig. Just for reference, this is my old homemade one that I just used to throw my DeWalt router on and drill a few holes for reference marks. So this is quite a bit of an upgrade, a lot more flexibility. So I'm super excited to try this out. So I did each of these passes about a 1/4 inch deep per pass. I think I did, I don't know, maybe 6 passes or so here. Went as far as I could with the router bit. We'll go finish that cut off at the bandsaw. That bandsaw left that little bit of a lip there, so I'm just passing over with the flush trim bit, smoothing that up. I've got a perfect circle. So here I'm putting on a 45-degree chamfer. Again, taking light passes, just a bit of a depth each time to take off more and more material. I think I did a total of 3 or 4 passes to get that really thick chamfer on there. Kind of a design preference. I didn't really want to go round over. I wanted to kind of keep some of the nice, sharp, crisp edges here. I also really like how that kind of exposes more of the spalting when you're looking at the face of the clock too. And here you see we've got a little bitty void in there that I'm just filling in with CA glue. Chose to do the dark black CA glue to kind of go with the darker coloration of the spalting. Getting to use that clock template now to really help line up where each of those brass markers are going to go. Using the compass obviously here, I figured out where on the clock I want to put that brass in line with where it's going to fall with each of the hands, and so marking that out and using the center joint there of the 2 glued up pieces as my middle line, and then once I line that up I can go through and poke a little hole for a guide for the drill bit. This was a new experience for me. I've never worked with solid brass before. Wasn't sure how soft it would be, but with a little patience and the hacksaw, got through just fine. Didn't really want to bust out the angle grinder. It's kind of messy and loud, but it's a little bit of a therapeutic thing, just spending some time hacking through this brass. Luckily I only had 4 of these. Hot. Does work up quite a bit of friction. You can see here I marked with a circle the 12, 3, 6, and 9. I was terrified if I didn't, I'd just start drilling away and drilling out more of the holes than I was supposed to with the wider diameter. Just know that I did test the fit out on a piece of scrap wood. No return. That's definitely sticking up more than I was hoping. I actually did initially try using the hacksaw on these. It was just very tedious and found it way easier to just clip them off. They're all in there. It's got a lot of flushing up to do. If you're not aware of this, playing cards come in super handy in woodworking a lot of times. I just drilled a hole the same diameter of these brass rods and laid that in over the brass itself, so that way it's the only thing exposed and I'm not scraping away, filing away at the wood itself. It was actually quite easy to file down these real small 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch diameter brass rods, but here, getting to the big guy, I found out pretty quickly this was going to take forever. This may be a terrible idea, but I'm breaking out the big guns with the angle grinder and flap disc, so let's see how this goes. Well, that worked about 1,000,000 times better and faster. All right, here we go with some 80 grit sandpaper.
"2,000 years later."
That actually worked amazingly well to flush up that brass with the wood. So it's going to need a little higher grit because of the curly cues it left in the brass. I definitely decided to spare you all the sanding that I did. This is just cleaning up the edges with 80 grit. But I worked my way up to 320 all the way around, and then I think 600 on the face to polish the brass. Here I'm putting together a simple jig for the router so I can put in a keyhole slot to hang the clock. And I'm about to make a major mistake in about 3 seconds. Let's see if you can figure out what it's going to be. Crap, just glued my finger. That's what you don't want to do.
75 years later.
Turns out vegetable oil actually breaks down the components of the glue, so a little bit of patience and some vegetable oil. I am free once again. So you see this. simple jig there for keyholes. Here's that keyhole bit. You can see there at the top, or bottom rather, it's wider, then still cuts at a narrower slot below that. So as you plunge it in, you've got a nice wide spot for the screw head, and then as you move it up, it cuts just in that more narrow part of the bit and allows that screw to slide up, and then it's nicely secured to the wall. Nice little keyhole to hang the clock from. And it didn't waver at all in the little jig. There we go. Here I'm just using the actual hardware itself as my template instead of taking measurements. Figured I'd just trace that. Instead of freehanding or eyeballing the routing of that, I figured I could make a little template with some double-sided tape on the back of scrap wood, put that right on my lines, and the bearing of my router bit can guide right along that, and I'll get a perfectly square hole in the bottom with rounded corners that end up matching the profile perfectly. And here's that bit with the bearing on the underside of the bit so that I can plunge down into the material. Now I can take those pieces off. I've got a little bit of a lip now for that bearing to ride on, so I can use that as the template from here on out. And here again, I'm just taking about 1/4 inch passes, so I'm not overworking the router bit or router itself to hog out the material, and number of passes till I get to my final depth. Perfect. Like I said, I sanded everything up to about 320 and then 600 on the face, but figured I'd spare you all that sanding and get to the good stuff, putting my brand in, and then get to the finishing process. Alright, we're going to be using some Rubio Monocoat Oil Plus 2C Walnut to really bring out the grain pattern on this guy. Thanks so much for following along with this build. Hopefully it was entertaining, or maybe in some ways a little bit educational if you're a woodworker yourself attempting to make a clock or something similar with brass inlays. Now just enjoy some glamour shots of the final product. Thanks again for watching.